Welcome to Break the Rules with Dr. Lauren Lax, a podcast dedicated to quieting the noise in the health, food, and fitness world. Dr. Lauren is a leading nutritionist, therapist, and functional medicine practitioner on a mission to help others thrive in their own lives, mind, body, and soul. And now, your host, Dr. Lauren Lax.
Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of the Break the Rules podcast, where we talk about quieting the noise in the health, food, and fitness world. And today we're talking about the hot topic of fertility, infertility, and natural conception, especially when you're hitting those roadblocks or have known others that have hit roadblocks in the sometimes to-do list of trying to conceive. And I'm so excited to have Dr. BreAnna Guan in the house. And Dr. BreAnna is the owner of the Boston-based fertility and women's health practice, Balanced Natural Health. Dr. Guan provides natural fertility support virtually to women from across the country. And she discovered the healing with the help of naturopathic medicine herself, which allowed her to conceive naturally and give her 3 beautiful children after years of hormonal imbalances. She believes preconception care is the ultimate in preventative medicine, and now her mission is to empower women and families to thrive during fertility, pregnancy, and parenthood, to positively impact generations to come. Dr. Guan, I am so excited to have you on the show and just talk about a topic that is near and dear to the hearts of many of the listeners out there. And if you could just give us a little bit more overview of who you are and what got you doing the beautiful work you're doing in the world.
Absolutely. So I'm professionally trained as a naturopathic physician. And what led me into this field of medicine is after I went off the birth control pill in my 20s, my period didn't come back. There were a lot of things that contributed to that, I believe. And I think it was all for a purpose of leading me to this point. But when I went to the conventional doctors, I wasn't getting answers. I was just getting recommendations to go back on the pill. And I knew that wasn't the answer. I knew that I wanted to support my cycle to come back naturally. And it took 6 years. I did, royal jelly, acupuncture, homeopathy, different diets. I tried it all. And I ultimately found that healing had to come from within me. And I became, a leader in my own healthcare. And I want to see that happen for other women too, where they are empowered to make those choices and decisions and to really understand how their bodies work and function.
That is amazing. I love how experience is the best teacher and typically will propel us. Like, I'm sure just in your 20s, having been on the pill, coming off, like what you're doing now wasn't necessarily on your radar at the time.
Right. Absolutely. It wasn't. But I think if I would have been trying to get pregnant, I would have been told there's no way, you don't have a period. You're obviously not going to get pregnant. And so my only option, or the option I would have been given at that time, would have been IVF. And I know I've worked with clients who are not menstruating regularly and are trying to get pregnant. So I'm so fortunate that I got to deal with it before the fact.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about too. So were you a naturopathic doctor at the time? Did you have your kids and then decide to go back? Where did your career path kind of begin to shape up?
Yeah. So I was studying to be an MD. I was doing pre-med and I felt like there was something missing. And so I was also going through this experience of not having a menstrual cycle and having hormone issues. I had acne and all of these hormonal symptoms. I didn't like being on the pill. And so I was looking for answers, and that led me to naturopathic medicine. And when I found that, I knew instantly that was the route for me. It had that holism that I was looking for, where it wasn't just, these are my hormone values, but I was a whole person. So I went to naturopathic medical school, became a physician. I got my period back the summer before I went to medical school, and then had my children shortly after I graduated.
Oh, all the stars aligned. Juggling it all. Well, let's kind of dive in then. So to the work you're actually doing, and maybe talking about themes, statistics, like what is the lay of the land right now as far as fertility goes, or infertility more specifically?
Right. So 1 in 8 couples are now struggling with fertility, and 40% of those are due to female factor issues. 40% are due to male factors. I like to bring that up because a lot of times the male factor is not really attested to, and a lot of the blame is placed on the female. But we see this infertility is spanning the globe. So it's not just a US situation, it's happening across countries, and we see more and more couples struggling with this. And I think that's important to point out also, because a lot of times it feels very, like it's my fault. Like the couples are really struggling and placing a lot of blame on themselves, when in fact, if it was just them, if it was so unique, it wouldn't be happening to so many people across the world. So I think it's really an environmental issue, a social issue. So a lot of different things are contributing to this. And we have, kind of the perfect storm all culminating together.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the factors maybe contributing to it. Someone I recently was talking to brought up the point 50 years ago were there infertility clinics, and not as many as perhaps today. And
right.
Looking at, why is that? And my training and the work that I'm doing, I see stress as being a big factor, and thinking slower pace of life, not as much go, maybe 50 years ago. And environmentally, our environment's changed, our food's changed, etc. But talk to us a little bit more specifically about some of these factors that may be contributing to the roadblocks couples are hitting.
Yeah, I think there are, 5 main issues that are all happening at the same time for couples. And I call these root causes of infertility. So I think there are increasing levels of metabolic issues that people are struggling with. So we see, 50% or more of the population being overweight, who are in the age ranges that are supposed to be the most fertile population. So our most fertile time in our life, we see higher levels of obesity and being overweight. We see more stress, inflammation, and toxicity across the board. So, our waters have increasing levels of chemicals, our food, the air we breathe has a huge impact on our fertility. And that's not really talked about very much, but pollution has an impact on fertility. We also see more hormonal imbalances, like you talked about, and those can be caused by environmental issues. And then women and couples in particular are waiting till later in life to have babies. So they're, going after their careers or have a lot of other priorities. And so we see couples trying later in life. So that's another big issue. And then nutritional deficiencies with our food supply and food access. We have a lot of food access, but not necessarily nutritionally rich foods, and not always eating the right diets to support fertility. So we see and sometimes it's not just one of these issues, but women and couples are encountering all of these issues or many of these issues. And that's all creating a stew of endocrine issues for women and couples. So getting to these root causes really helps to boost and support fertility versus just trying to force pregnancy.
Let's talk then about getting to the root causes, because for someone maybe listening to this, they may be doing quote unquote all the things, eating salads daily, I'm working out, I'm trying to sleep, I'm drinking water. And there still can be holes that we're not super aware of, both environmentally and nutritionally. Talk a little bit more fine-tuned details about what root cause digging looks like and considerations.
Yeah. So I think it's really one of the really neat things that we can do is look into genomics or single nucleotide polymorphisms. That's one of the things that I like to do in my practice. And it allows us to see perhaps an increased need for certain nutritional components in the diet. There are certain SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphisms that may increase your need for vitamin D or vitamin A as retinols, methyl factors, a greater need for folate or zinc. So that is something that is not always looked at, but is really important. So that would be really empowering to know about your SNPs. You can do nutritional analysis to see what are your, vitamin statuses, how are your vitamin D levels, your B vitamins, your lipid panels, and all of those. Sort of nutritional testing is a great place to start. I also like to see toxicity testing done. That can be done via urine, and that can tell us about things like BPA and other chemicals. So we know that when women have higher levels of chemicals, they're more likely to have reduced AMH levels or anti-Mullerian hormone levels and go into menopause earlier. So that's another, deeper digging place to look and see if, especially for women who are, in their 30s to 40, past 35 to 40, who are seeing, higher FSH levels and reduced AMH levels. I like to do a full thyroid panel also. So when we're looking at the metabolic health of a woman, is her thyroid functioning well? If your cholesterol levels are higher and you are struggling with obesity, we want to look at your fasting insulin and also check out the thyroid, which can be playing into ovarian health and your metabolic health.
Yeah, I love how you mention all those things, because it seems like it is a more unique approach than just saying, like, I don't know what's going on, just go to the fertility clinic, right?
Right, absolutely. There's so much that we can be doing.
Yeah, before getting to that or having to go to that point. Now, with your clients, do you find natural conception, like it is really about fine-tuning these things, or is there a time and a place for IVF as well? How do you intertwine that?
I think that there is a time and a case for IVF. I think it's not always the first step, though. And a lot of times we see that, the numbers are a certain way and clients are told, like, your only option is going to be IVF. And I've worked with women who have lower AMH levels or their numbers just aren't looking great. And they've been told, if you want to have a baby, you have to do IVF point blank. And then, we work together for 3 months, 6 months, and then they're getting pregnant. And, I've also worked with women where we've done every single thing we could do. Their diet is spot on. They're taking all of the supplements. Their body weight is like balanced, their sleep, everything that we could do, and things are still not progressing. And so we'd had to use assistance to support them. And I think in those cases, it tends to be more genetic or passed down from their mom. We know there are certain, chemical exposures that if you're exposed to in utero are going to impact your children and your children's children. And I think a lot of the cases of infertility, are also a result of these chemical changes that they might have experienced in utero. So it's not always something that we're doing, and it's not always something that you can overcome naturally, in my experience.
It's unique, I'm sure, for every individual.
Absolutely, yes.
A question I get often asked, I work a lot with folks that have had histories of chronic dieting or eating disorders, have periods that have gone missing for a long time, or they've been on the pill for a long time and then they come off and then the period's like wonky. What is the role of the period in having or not having? Because you're a baby, basically fertility. I've heard stories and known a couple people that have been able to still get pregnant surprisingly, even though they were not like bleeding basically during menstruation. And talk a little bit about just, the role of the period, fertility. We know it's important, but why?
Right. So the monthly cycle happens, in order to support pregnancy. And part of that cycle, the menstrual cycle, is ovulation. And ovulation is when an egg is released from the ovary, from a follicle, and then it travels, if there is, the sperm meets the egg, and then they travel to the uterus and implantation happens and pregnancy comes. But you can ovulate without having a regular period. You can also have a period and not be regularly ovulating. And I see this with some women in my practice. They will say, I'm ovulating, my cycles are regular, they come every 28 days, and they have been forever, but I'm still not getting pregnant. And one thing that we find once they start checking their data, with basal body temperature charting is something that I recommend quite frequently, as they're not actually ovulating, or they're not ovulating every month, or they're not ovulating at the time that they think they're ovulating. They may ovulate later in their cycle or earlier in their cycle. And then when they're trying to conceive, they're missing the timing piece. And so even though you might be having a period every month, the ovulation could be there or not. If you're not ovulating, obviously you're not going to get pregnant. So one of the first steps in fertility care, I think, is really making sure that ovulation is happening and knowing exactly when it is so you can get the timing lined up.
Do you have any period trackers as well that you like to use with folks? Or do you ever do things like even seed cycling to try to balance?
I like the app Kandara, Kindara. It allows you to input a lot of different data points. So you want to be monitoring your cervical mucus. You can monitor cervical position, or the position of the cervix, basal body temperature. You want to monitor libido. So we should see at ovulation that your energy levels go up and your libido goes up, and you want to get out there more, and you're less focused on food and more focused on mating. So we want to see those things, all of those indicators lining up. I really like basal body temperature charting versus the LH strips. Some women find basal body temperature charting to be stressful, so they'll do the LH strips, which is fine. But if you see that temperature raise at ovulation, it's a really clear indicator that ovulation has happened and when it's happened. So I like that. The Kandara app is great because my clients can share their data with me really easily. It has a feature. And so I can monitor their cycles along with them to know, like, oh, this looks really great this month, and we see the temperature going up. Or, oh, it looks like your temperature is dropping early and we see you spotting, which could be a sign that, your progesterone levels are low, like there's more of a luteal phase defect. So seed cycling is great for those women who have luteal phase defects to help support progesterone levels. I love those. So we do, pumpkin seed and flaxseed in the first half of the cycle. And then after ovulation has happened, we switch to sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. So that's really great to do. And if you're not, ovulating, or your cycle's not regular, you can start with just following the moon cycle. So following the moon at the new moon, start with the flaxseed and the pumpkin seed, the sunflower seed, and sesame at the full moon, and switch that way. It's a neat way to help reinstate a normal cycle if that's not happening.
So, there is, as I guess for the listeners listening to this, if they're not having their regular cycle, or their period was kind of like thwarted from an eating disorder, not all hope is lost.
Absolutely. There's so many things that you can do. And, one of the things that's really important would be to keep your calorie intake really consistent and keep stress levels lower. So stress can be interpreted as like, being in an environment that's too cold, or having a chronic infection, or skipping meals. Over exercising is a big cause of infertility, and too much stress, poor sleep. So keeping stress levels moderated is really important for those women who are missing their periods. The herb Vitex or chasteberry can really help restore the communication between the pituitary and the ovaries. And with, anorexia or eating disorders, sometimes that communication gets disturbed. So I like Vitex for that. And I think the basal body temperature, the seed cycling, helps the woman restore that connection with her body that's sometimes severed with those conditions. So I think there's so much emotional and spiritual and physical things that we can do to help support those things to come back online.
Yeah. I love talking medicinal foods and herbs as well that you have found to be thematic or helpful for what folks.
Yeah, this is one topic that I love so much because I feel like there's so much power in our food as medicine and herbs, and I feel like it's not known as well. So for fertility, I think of, Vitex as being one of the most important ones. For chronic stress, I like ashwagandha. So that helps to bring down and support stress response. Rhodiola is another great fertility herb for those who are stressed out. I like maca root too. So for women who have more of those estrogen dominant pictures, lower testosterone levels, maca can be good for helping to increase libido, increasing the androgens or the adrenal hormone support. And with foods, I think fats are really important, and specifically the types of fats that we're having. So we see, omega-3 rich fats supporting FSH levels, AMH levels, restoring, ovarian response for women who are aging, and being really essential for balancing inflammation levels. So if you had PCOS, you might have higher levels of inflammation or stress. So I like omega-3s as a really important part of a fertility plan. And then we see in the research, the literature showing that the Mediterranean type diets to support fertility as well. And so that would be a low carbohydrate diet rich in fish, leafy green vegetables, lentils or legumes as a protein source, and then those healthy fats like olive oil. And those, with a dialed in diet that's really rich in those things, we're going to see the follicular fluid with enhanced nutritional content. So, it's like your eggs are like seeds, right? And you're planting them in soil, which is your body. And you want that soil to be really rich in nutrients so that the seeds are going to grow well. And so the follicular fluid we want it to be rich in nutrients also. So, increasing leafy greens. So how can you add more of those? One thing that I like to do when I'm making out my meals is I will just start with filling up the plate with leafy greens. And then you can't go wrong, right? You just add to that. So your protein, your carbohydrates. So it's a really great, easy way to just take the thinking out of it if you just start with green. And then, your antioxidant rich foods are going to be protective as well. So foods high in vitamin C. Camu berry is a really supplement or powder that you can supplement with to boost vitamin C levels. Of course, berries are going to be high in polyphenols and flavonoids to protect and reduce the damage from oxidative stress.
So many foods. And I love that. Like we can really, before even going to Amazon.com, go to your kitchen to find a lot of these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of them, all of them.
Right. And, with oxidative stress, especially as women are aging, their redox capacity or ability to balance oxidative stress declines. And so if you think about an apple, an apple is protected because it's not exposed to air, light, or heat. And then you cut the apple open, right? So maybe that's sitting at a desk. So you cut the apple open, it starts to brown, but then if you slice the apple up, there's more skin exposed. So you get more oxidative stress. So, and then say you slice the apple in half and then you put like sugar on it and put it in your hot car, right? It's going to turn brown really fast. That's oxidative stress or oxidation to the apple. So we want to protect ourselves in the same way. So smoking, drinking, not exercising, having elevated blood sugar, being exposed to chemicals, not sleeping, all of these increase our oxidation just like the apple. And so we want to pour on antioxidants from our food, but also reduce those sources of oxidation to help protect our eggs and sperm so that they have this strong protective capacity. Because as they're so vulnerable to oxidative stress at the gamete stage.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned. I mean, stress all around is a huge threat ultimately to fertility, it sounds. And let's kind of shift gears and touch on you were mentioning the fact about love sometimes being left out of the infertility conundrum. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. I think when we think about reproduction and making a baby, it's the highest expression of love, or one of the highest expressions of love, you could say. So at that moment, that timing when the human is conceived, what was that like? And does that energy impact the future baby? In Ayurvedic medicine, they say the mood of the encounter and what the parents were eating what their health was like all impact the baby and its constitution. And I really think that that's pretty beautiful. And so, when we are thinking about infertility, there's so much stress around conception, and often love is not even a part of the picture, right? It's not an important piece. And we know that the hormone oxytocin is produced when there is an encounter, a love encounter. So when you come home and you talk to your spouse about your day and they consult with you, you start to produce oxytocin. And when you give your partner a back massage, you start to produce oxytocin. And the more oxytocin you have, the more likely you are to engage in these love behaviors. And so we see oxytocin increasing fertility, actually. There's studies showing improved semen quality, semen parameters with oxytocin. We see improved implantation levels with oxytocin because the uterus will actually contract and guide the egg to a place of implantation, or guide the sperm towards the right side to meet the egg. And so it's really just this beautiful design that love really supports fertility. And then how can we support and nourish that to improve fertility? And, what are we missing when we think about the mood of going to a clinic and being anxious or nervous, or, getting a blood draw, or worrying about progesterone levels, or getting so in our heads about, making a baby happen that we forget the fundamental ingredient that is so important and magical for the health of the future baby.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that, but just because, it's not about going through the motions or just going to see the next doctor or getting the next test done, coming back to the center on that piece as well. Well, Dr. Guan, where can people find out more about you and your work and just the amazing breath of fresh air to this scene?
Oh, thanks so much. They can go to my website. It's DrBreAnnaGuan.com. I'm also, on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, both at DrBreAnnaGuan.com. So there are some, freebies and downloads and things that they can find there to support their fertility. And I'm just so happy to be in this space and help support these couples, because I know they have so many options and things to support themselves.
I'm so happy you're doing this work, and we'll definitely be keeping up with it. And thank you for helping us break some rules in the fertility space today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.